Human life is by nature very unpredictable. The smallest of decisions may drastically turn your life around. They may make you wealthy, they might result in you dead. We never know the impact our choices might have. If we cruise through life without any concern, we may ruin it. But if we worry about every little choice that we make, then we aren't living at all. And all it takes is a series of unfortunate small decisions to cut your life short. Bettina and Klaus were two young students from West Germany traveling the world together. They were in love, eager to learn more about the world that surrounded them. Bringing along their mutual friend, Thomas Schmidt, they set out to explore the Nordic countries together with what little money they had saved for the trip. The plan was to start in Germany, travel through Denmark until they reached Sweden, then make their way through West Sweden until they reached North Cape, their final destination, before finally returning south along the coast of Norway. The journey would offer many spectacular sights. The couple would get the chance to explore new cultures and make meaningful connections. But the plan changed. Bettina and Klaus wanted more out of their trip. As they would specifically describe, the group wanted to experience a cruise. Thus, changes were made, and instead of traveling through just Sweden, the trio booked a ferry, formerly known as MS Viking Sally. They wanted to travel to Finland, intending to reach North Cape from there. The idea offered nothing but benefits. Why not include a breathtaking boat trip on your journey? They had an Interrail pass, and now seemed like the perfect time to use it. The decision was spontaneous, unprovoked, but ultimately harmless. On July 27, 1987, the group boarded MS Viking Sally, ready for a journey they would never forget. As the ferry sailed off, the group let no time go to waste. They explored the ship, enjoying the interior and the general hustle and bustle of their surroundings. Bettina and Klaus were outgoing people, always happy to stop and talk to somebody and maybe make a friend or two. Their friend Thomas, however, was described as a more reserved, quiet kind of person. Klaus was a student of automotive technology, so it didn't take long until the couple befriended a Finnish businessman who was transporting car parts from Germany at the time. Klaus even gave him a nickname, the Fun Finn. Conversation flew naturally, and time passed without notice. The group made sure to buy souvenirs at the onboard shop. After all, nothing lasts forever, and such a pleasant experience is absolutely worth remembering. The evening had gradually settled into the night. The loud conversation was replaced by occasional whispers, the warm summer breeze giving way to a chilly wind. It was at this point that the trio made the decision to separate. Bettina and Klaus' budget was rather limited, so the couple headed to the 9th deck of the ship, an open-air area right next to the helipad at the rear of the Viking Sally. A perfect place to wake up to a beautiful summer sunrise if you don't mind the cold too much. Thomas, on the other hand, wasn't so thrilled about the idea. He chose to sleep in a public area inside the ship, away from Bettina and Klaus, as he couldn't bear to sleep on the upper deck with all the noise around. The couple set up their sleeping bags in a sheltered corner near the helipad, but the reason for the chosen location was twofold. The lamp that was intended to light it was broken, so the corner was effectively pitch black, a sleeping place, but simultaneously a blind spot on the ship. The two got comfy in their sleeping bags, and sunrise was mere hours away. A group of Danish Boy Scouts were wandering the Viking Sally. The group was cheerful and in high spirits as they walked through the decks without any particular goal in mind. While they were making their way across the 9th deck, they saw something interesting, but perhaps not all that unusual. A man and a woman were near the helipad, leaning against the wall and trying to stand. Their movement was shaky and uncoordinated, almost like they weren't processing the reality around themselves. The Boy Scouts had assumed that the couple was simply intoxicated, probably drunk off whatever overpriced champagne the board shop was selling. As they approached the two people closer, reality set in. The two were covered in blood and barely conscious, mumbling incoherencies and unable to support the weight of their own bodies. Bettina and Klaus had suffered severe blunt force trauma. Their faces were described to look smashed and rubbed out. They tried to stand again and again and kept falling. One of the Boy Scouts, named Thomas Nielsen, immediately rushed to the victims trying to offer them first aid, but the injuries were too severe, and the ship's nurse was called in shortly after. Nielsen has allegedly helped the critically injured Bettina taxis down the stairs, and he assisted in carrying her to the rescue helicopter that had arrived. Time was of the essence. The victims arrived at the hospital. Klaus Schelkel, the 20-year-old student, was pronounced dead on arrival. The nurse had tried to resuscitate him during the flight, but the injuries proved too devastating. The blows to his head had pierced his skull, leaving no chance for survival. His partner, Bettina Taxis, was unconscious but still alive. After a lengthy medical operation, Bettina has showed no signs of consciousness for several weeks, but she survived the assault despite maintaining gruesome physical injuries. Still, she didn't remember a thing about what had happened. 4 detectives from the Turku Police Department were flown immediately to the scene of the crime. The sun was finally rising, but neither Klaus nor Bettina were there to witness it. The investigation that followed could only be described as hectic. Police vessels were sent to surround the ship from all sides. They wanted to seal the perpetrator in, essentially trapping them while they were still on board. There was no camera footage of the crime, no direct eyewitnesses, and no murder weapon to be found. The detective's job was next to impossible: find the murderer among the 1,400 people on the ship. Originally, the plan was to interview every single one of them, but the task proved impossible due to its sheer scale. The police quickly ruled out the children and the elderly from the list of suspects and focused on lone adult travelers. Still, nothing. Nielsen, the scout boy, among other individuals, offered his account of what he saw, but nothing was conclusive. The police eventually settled on 2 main suspects. One, a British man, was detained because his clothes were stained with blood. Further forensic analysis confirmed that the blood was merely his own, just a nosebleed. Thomas Schmidt, the victim's companion, was also detained, but there was nothing linking him to the crime. In August 1987, fishermen found a plastic bag full of clothes on an uninhabited skerry near the ship's route. The bag included shoes, shorts, a red jumper, and a glove that contained the initials HK. HK? Nobody was suspected with those initials, and the evidence proved to be another dead end. The trail was going cold quick, and it seemed like we had a perfect crime on our hands. Only one person of interest remained. At the time, 18-year-old Danish scout Thomas Nielsen was hailed as a hero. He was among the first to discover the victims and the first to rush to their aid. He happily cooperated with the investigation, offering what little info he had. Sure, he was covered in the victims' blood, but the reason was obvious. He had helped carry them to the helicopter. His scout leader later noted something unsettling though. Thomas seemed to love the spotlight, and despite the gruesome scene he had just witnessed, he didn't seem troubled at all. Still, as far as the case was concerned, Nielsen was a brave Boy Scout who did what he could in a dire situation. But the hero reputation wouldn't last long. Over the next years, Nielsen's life took a downward trajectory. He spent over 20 years in prison for various offenses including robbery, illegal threats, and weapons violations. He even changed his identity. He would change his name many times, eventually settling on Herman Himmel. From 2015 to 2016, almost 30 years after the Viking Sally murder went without development, Herman sent a series of text messages to his ex-wife. It seems the esteemed hero of the story had more to do with the assault than it initially seemed. Herman's ex-wife reported the text messages to the police, and the case was reopened for the first time in 20 years. He was detained and quickly taken for questioning. If those messages aren't a confession, then what is? But Herman was just getting started. In fact, when he was questioned by the police in 2016, he would identify the murder weapon, a slag hammer used on boats to remove slag from welding. Supposedly, Herman would state that such a tool would be easy to dispose of by simply throwing it overboard. The slag hammer made sense as a murder weapon, and it was completely consistent with the victim's injuries, though the police had never considered a slag hammer as a candidate at the time. How did he know? And if he didn't, how would he guess something so specific? But we are not even done. Allegedly, Herman told a Finnish investigator off the record that he had found the slag hammer on the ship, found Bettina and Klaus with the intent to rob them, because, as he stated, life was unfair. He then tossed the weapon into the water and joined back with the other Boy Scouts to pretend to discover the bodies. Herman may as well have handed the case to the police on a silver platter. But it's not so simple. While Herman's statements themselves are pretty convincing, they are just statements, and most of them cannot even be confirmed. Herman later retracted all of them. Why would he confess then change his mind? Well, Herman has stated that he was simply playing a game with the police, leading them on with pretty confessions and provocative statements. Herman hated the police, having spent a great deal of his life in prison. Well, murder is no game, and Herman stood trial in 2021. The prosecution's case was straightforward. Herman had confessed, both in text and allegedly to the police, and he shared details only the murderer could have possibly known. But the verdict would come, and the 52-year-old Herman Himmel, a hero and a criminal, was found innocent. Why? To put it shortly, the prosecution made critical mistakes in following the protocol. The interviews with Herman had been conducted without a defense attorney present, and the language barrier didn't help, with the interviews being held in mixed English and Danish. He justified identifying the murder weapon by claiming the police had shown him a picture of it during the time of the incident, something that could neither be confirmed nor denied. It didn't help that Herman's ex-wife refused to testify in court, even though the text messages she had received served as the main reason to reignite the investigation in the first place. Ultimately, the prosecution failed to prove he was the only person with the opportunity and motive for the assault. For the time he spent on trial for a double murder he had allegedly confessed to, the court ordered the state to pay him just 3,000 euros in compensation. He walked away a free man and, legally, an innocent one. Did he attack Bettina and Klaus? If so, this criminal case is a clear demonstration of the importance of protocol. If not, then justice was served, though in this scenario, the attacker still walks free. It's terrifying how small choices hold the power to shape our lives and deaths. What was supposed to be a romantic trip across the Nordic countries turned into a nightmare that would end one life and derail another one. Officially, the 1987 MS Viking Sally murder is still unsolved. It wasn't the only murder either. Just a year prior, in 1986, a businessman was killed on the same exact ship. In 1993, the ship was renamed, and just a year later, it took 852 lives in what's known as the sinking of MS Estonia. These are all subjects for a different video though. If there is something I missed or gotten wrong, feel free to correct me in the comments for the video. But that was it for today, so thank you and goodbye.